Innovate. Enable. Forbes India presents the next wave of cloud innovation in association with Google Cloud.
India's economic revival hinges on its manufacturing sector, driving growth and jobs. As the pandemic exposed the fragility of global supply chains, the situation was somewhat tempered by lower consumer demand due to the lockdowns. But in the post-pandemic world, as demand comes roaring back, the manufacturing sector would need to ensure that supply-side issues are taken care of and capitalize on the opportunity. And for that to happen, the sector now relies on a growth formula where technology enables them to not just save costs, but also add value for customers, employees, and vendors. Today, we get an inside look into the innovation quotient of enterprises in this sector and understand how the power of technology and the cloud could catalyze a supply-side miracle for the manufacturing sector with long-term gains in efficiency and productivity. Welcome to Forbes India presents the next wave of cloud innovation in association with Google Cloud. I'm your host Gautam Srinivasan, and joining me are top voices from industry to share the digital transformation experience of their enterprises in converting data to growth. Our panel features V. Venkatachalam, CEO at Raychem RPG, Vineet Jaiswal, Deputy CEO for the Center of Excellence at Vedanta Resources, Jayant Gupta, CGM for Information Systems at Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, S.K. Suri, General Manager for Technology at Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited, Surajit Ghosh, General Manager for IT at NTPC Limited, Prateek Goel, Associate Partner at McKinsey India, and Vivek Subramaniam, Principal for Customer Engineering and Manufacturing at Google. Well, featuring some of the largest companies in the public and private sector, this is truly an August gathering. Thank you everyone for joining us. Let's first understand the moving parts behind a resilient supply chain that is powering India's Industrial Revolution 4.0, and then move on to addressing the challenges. Vivek, we'll start with you. As the world looks to diversify its supply chains, digital manufacturing is seen as the key to making India the world's factory. As I mentioned earlier, as pent-up consumer demand comes rushing back in the post-pandemic world on one side, while supply chains remain disrupted on the other side. In your opinion, how can technology help in resolving this situation and enabling India to capitalize on this growth opportunity? What's the Google viewpoint?
Well, first of all, hello, Gautam, and hello to the panelists. It's great to be part of such an August panel. To your specific question, Gautam, I'd like to answer this using two lenses, right? The first is in the customer side, which you spoke about. On the customer lens, one thing that we need to know is the question to answer is, how do we provide a personalized customer experience for a generation that is used to instant gratification and an e-commerce type experience, right? Now, to solve that problem, it starts with data. And the need of the hour is having a deep understanding of what the customer needs and what the customer wants. Now, and I'll talk about our organization as a template in terms of what we are doing with other customers. What we are doing with other enterprises is we overlay our tool sets around e-commerce or the Google Marketing Cloud platform that we have, and use our prowess in the space of data, data analytics, data sciences to process these large sets of information and provide very specific customer insights on the behavior, needs, and interventions organizations take. Now, what does that solve? It ensures that our customers get the right product or the right service at the desired time they want, right? Now, that's one lens of looking at the problem. The second lens, like you mentioned, was the supply chain side and the manufacturing side. I do not need to tell people this, but the pandemic and the events post that have led to supply chains being disrupted across the world, be it the COVID pandemic, or be it the Suez Canal blockage, or the recent port congestions that we've had. Right now, technology can play a big role in solving for some of these problems, and I'll take a very specific example of what we are doing in this space. Recently, we announced the launch of a solution called the Digital Supply Chain Twin. Right, what this solution basically does is it helps you provide visibility of your entire supply ecosystem and helps you identify bottlenecks and issues early on, so you can minimize any disruption that may happen. Now, while this is on the specific example for supply chain, there are technology solutions which companies such as ours provides to help optimize for operations and other unplanned downtime events within the factory, right? So to summarize, by using a customer lens and a supply side lens, technology can address these gaps and inefficiencies across both these areas and ensure that for the customer, we provide the right product at the right time with minimal disruption for us as a country and enterprises within the country to capitalize on this opportunity.
All right, Vivek, now that you have set the broad context in the lens of customers and supply chain and how technology comes up with solutions, let's hear the stories of resilience and growth and how digital transformation helps across the public and private sector to unlock new possibilities. Let's start with the public sector, and I'll bring in Mr. Gupta and Mr. Suri for this. As PSU Maharatnas from the oil and gas sector, the sheer size of your supply chains could be considered overwhelming as they span, say, sourcing, refining, distribution, storage, and sales. Now, there are multiple levers of value creation across each part of the supply chain. That includes, say, exploration infrastructure, refining infrastructure, and then marketing, distribution, and retail infrastructure. So I want to understand from you, some key highlights of how this technology transformation has helped you address business challenges and enabled you to modernize products and services as the industry especially increases its focus on renewable energy. So we'll come to Mr. Gupta first and then for Mr. Suri's viewpoint. Mr. Gupta?
Yes, so hello everybody, and wonderful to be here in this panel. Technology has been our mainstay for immense number of years. It's quite true that we have a huge supply chain. We have more than 80 terminals and depots. We have almost 19,000 odd plus retail outlets, 6,000 plus distributors, LPG distribution. To manage all these and the vast number of customers that come in at the end of this chain, technology is heavily used. We believe in delivering happiness, and one of the examples that I could bring up, use of technology, which helped out a lot of customers, was in a contactless experience of a customer at a retail outlet. The technologies, if you see at the back, what all work on it, right from filling up of the wallet, that is the payment part, is electronic. You basically have an app where you fill up the money. You have a RFID tag already fitted in on the car. You simply drive into the outlet, and the petrol pump attendant understands the kind of fuel that is to be filled. He fills it, and you're ready to go. You can preset how much of petrol do you want or diesel you want. You can also put up an amount that you want it to be filled or tank full. Those all options are there built into the system for you to ensure that you don't have to step out of the vehicle. So that's one use of the technology that I could talk about. There are plenty of other technology uses that we could discuss while we go on. Some towards
anything from the supply side, sir? Anything from the supply chain side? You mentioned the customer side, how the contactless experience helps. Anything from the supply chain side? One key highlight where you see technology delivering on its promise.
Very popular is the all our tank trucks which are fitted with the electronic locks, which are fitted with monitoring system of geo positioning coordinates. So both, if you look at it, we know where the truck is, and the locks open only once they reach their predefined area. Now, knowing where the trucks are helps us in optimizing the delivery patterns. How much of usage has it really done it? When is it likely to come in? All those are optimized mechanisms of delivery, which are brought into the supply chain.
Indeed, optimizing logistics, a key part of the manufacturing growth story, and of course, technology playing an important role there. Those were the highlights when it came to Hindustan Petroleum. Let me get the Bharat Petroleum side of the story. Mr. Suri, we're discussing this from the lens of consumers and the supply chain. So, some key highlights you could share on how digital transformation efforts have enabled or unlocked benefits on both sides.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to be joining this August platform. And thank you for asking first tough question in the beginning itself. So anyway, just to give a background, BPCL is a large PSU, Maharatna PSU. It is a Fortune 500 company. Digital has been, one of our key forte for last more than 55 years. In fact, I'll not go in a very old history, but we are one of the largest SAP implementation which was carried out around 20 years back. All our processes are highly digitized. In fact, for us, consumer is the king. And coming to specifically on your question of supply chain, we are used very heavily on Internet of Things to optimize our supply chain to help our businesses. Whether our 3 refineries, we have got more than 76 retail terminals and 53 LPG plants, and more than 25,000 tankers which provide day in day out products to our customers. So we are use IoT to very large extent to integrate our all these supply locations onto a single platform to provide an integrated view of entire operating supply chain. So with this, we are able to deliver the value. And I am sure that I agree with Mr. Jayant Gupta. Entire pandemic, all the oil companies, whether it is BPCL, IOCL, or HPCL, we were able to deliver the products, whether and LPG connections to all the more than 8.3 crore consumer in case of BPCL. We have used innovative technologies to deliver solution to our consumers. In fact, recently we have launched, analytics-based and data-driven solution whereby we know that in advance when the refill is going to be supplied in advance. So we send SMS and consumer can take a decision to deny the refill booking. So many of these solutions are really helping us to meet our provide our products to the market and bring a smile to our end consumers. There are many other solutions which we'll talk during this 1.5 hour long discussions. So this is what we have done in supply chain. Of course, all this is done on a common platform. This is recently has been gone live. So this is all adding value to our businesses into very large extent.
Absolutely, it's interesting to see analytics being used for demand prediction when it comes to gas supplies, and of course, as you mentioned, IoT is being used. So we are seeing a lot of use cases emerge. Logistics optimization also being one of mentioned. Those were the stories from the public sector, those stories of resilience and how technology enabled them to keep the wheels running. Let's come to the private sector, and I'll come to you, Mr. Venkatachalam, first. As a market leader in innovative energy and hydrocarbon solutions, this now I want to understand from a research and development perspective. How does the cloud enable the RayChem Innovation Center from an R&D and engineering perspective to develop next generation products and solutions for markets that our RayChem RPG serves?
First of all, thank you, Gautam, for having invited me over. It's really a pleasure being in this August group. Let me set off with giving you a little bit of context of what the organization is. We largely serve customers in utility and energy sectors, both in India and globally. In many ways, I would say the pandemic that happened kind of was a awakening for us. We weren't prepared to manage it, and I'll give you a little bit of explanation. In many ways, before the pandemic, we were a laggard as far as digital evolution is concerned. So we were heavily relying on our ability to best cost manufacturing, largely by labor arbitrage and stuff like that. And here comes the pandemic, and everything seems to be very volatile and very uncertain. And largely, we kind of started running faster on digital and started embracing it. And I'll tell you a few instances. Let me start with the supply chain. with all that was going on in terms of disruptions in the supply chain and stuff like that, we had a massive inventory, either a deficit or excess of inventory. We weren't able to manage inventory well. So we incorporated a few solutions, which were largely a pull-based system basis. Once we get an order, we kind of intimate on a live-term basis, on a real-time basis to our sub-suppliers and vendors, wherein we got the inventory just on time without any delays and stuff like that, which is largely a real-time based software that helped us accomplish what we wanted to do. The second thing is something that Vivek also alluded to, is around the e-commerce. In the times of pandemic, we weren't able to connect with the customers. Our relationship, our customer connect is built on relationship, influencing the customers and stuff like that, and that wasn't the case. So we had to quickly move on to alternates, which is on the e-commerce and stuff like that, and that's something that we are developing and we are bringing up to speed. The third thing is a lot more interesting from an innovation perspective. If you look at our products per se, which is in the energy sector and the places we play, it is basically a combination of some metal and polymers put together. So the performance of these products are based on the physical and chemical properties, just like the periodic table is, whatever the outcome is. And it is not at all smart. So something that we have now done is bringing in more semiconductor into our product line and making it a lot more measurable, so that then it is a question of how to connect it and make it more predictive and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of aspect that is going into making our products smart over the last few months, if I may say. And the last but not the least is the element of simplification. There are instances where our industry demands that the customers have to inspect the product before it is dispatched, and that's a kind of grandfather clause that exists in the industry. And imagine in the pandemic kind of a situation, we couldn't move people couldn't come, so we had massive inventory build up and finished goods inventory and stuff like that. So we simply adopted, put in some cameras, did the inspection virtually, which kind of kept the supply chain moving, and the customers were a lot more happy, and we brought in a lot more transparency and trust into the equation. Now, today, that has become the norm. So in many ways, we've changed gears, but big thanks to the pandemic that has kind of nudged us to move towards digital, but I think we will continue to accelerate on this front. So those were few of the instances that I could share that we've made certain progress in across our business, Gautam.
All right, let's distill all those points together and see how innovation enables enterprises to do more with less. And for that, I'll bring in Vineet to join in for the conversation. Vineet, from digital smelter solutions at Jharsuguda, using digital twin technology for improving efficiency remotely, to digitalization at the underground mines at the Swartberg Mountains in South Africa for anticipating issues and sustaining machine health. Vedanta seems adept at scaling digital transformation in terms of doing more with less as part of Project Pratham. So tell us, how did Vedanta address friction points in digitizing the production value chain using the cloud across its many verticals around the world? And what sort of return on investment do you expect?
Great. Thanks for inviting me with such a nice panelist and learning a lot of it. So thank you for that. So now to answer you, we are doing a lot of innovation across the value chain, right? And two of the biggest thing is mines and manufacturing, right? So, and whatever we are doing it in 5 big themes, right? We are trying to make our mines smarter. We call it digital manufacturing, connected logistics. Then at the end of it, right? How are we making our enabling functions smarter? And finally, the culture transformation of it. So whatever we do these 5 things. Now, coming back to your question on the mine side or the plant side, let me give 2 examples, right? One I will give from the mining side. We have a world-class ITMS system. We are making that ITMS system further smarter. We have put small IoT devices to help us track and trace that, right? But it gives a couple of things. It helps us to make sure we utilize those assets to the maximum. We come to know where exactly the problem is, how to solve it out, optimize its movement. But we also come to know is there going to be a maintenance problem, right? So two sides of it, not only tracing and tracking that, but also making sure we know about the assets. From the manufacturing side, a lot of use cases. As you talked about Jharsuguda, that's one of it. Maintenance is a big thing, right? We are moving towards a lot of predictive maintenance side of it. We want to know if an asset is going to get down, right? And bring the stoppage to the production. Because the big five things, if I see from the digital side of it or digital transformation on any company, is are we working on the throughput? So are we increasing the throughput? Are we optimizing the cost? Are you reducing the defect? Are we increasing the asset availability and safety? So whatever we do, we work around the value is unlocked through these five things, and we are creating digital thread for that.
Well, it's great to see so many use cases emerging, as you said, predictive maintenance, increasing throughput, asset quality. The use cases just keep coming up as you span from digital mines to digital manufacturing overall in your value chain. That's from the private sector's viewpoint. Let's see the public sector viewpoint on resource optimization. And for that, I'll bring in Mr. Ghosh. Mr. Ghosh, as India's largest energy conglomerate, how is NTPC bringing together various technologies like, say, AI/ML, which could be used when it comes to predictive analytics for centers, or the cloud, which is inventory or stockyard management, industrial Internet of Things, AR, VR, whole host of applications? How do you use that to convert traditional power plants to digital power plants? And what lessons has the experience in digitizing power plants? I believe the Simhadri power plant is a test case. How has that provided lessons in terms of leveraging technology end to end for business process and resource optimization?
So I said thank you, Gautam, for having me invited to this panel, August panel. And before I talk on the AI/ML part, see, I mean, we generate 25% of the electricity needs of India. And as regards the front-end workers, you will appreciate that because of the, I mean, anywhere you go, even the hospitals can't function without the power producers generate the power that helps in running all the industries that is run with the electricity. Now we are into all this, and we are spread across the country, and we are into every kind of fuel. We are moving out of fossil fuel is one of our primary fuels that we use, but we are into, as you all know, that we are into the renewable energies of wind, the thermal, the hydro, as well as the, solar. And we have also we have integrated backwise also. That is the coal mining also has been a major foray. Now, before, in the part of the Digital India initiative of our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, our chairman, Sri Gurdeep Singh, had given a clarion call that he wants to move things digitally in NTPC. So you all will be great to know that I have driven a project known as Project Pradeep in NTPC, which is coined as Proactive Digital Initiative for Paperless. If you ever happen to come to NTPC, to any executive, you will not find any documents, because from 18 July, we have had all our approvals digitally moving, and we have used the IBM platform, which has, and because the main problem that was here was, our files used to crisscross the country. We are located remotely, and the approvals would have gone to regional headquarters. It would have come to the corporate and corporate centers in Delhi or in Hyderabad, and it would move from table to table. A typical file in NTPC would have taken 6 months. Now, our from 6 months, it is not even 6 days. In certain times, it is getting cleared within 60 minutes. This is the kind of transformation that has taken place, and this has helped in rolling. And there is another great advantage that we have done is we have gone ahead with the total digitization of our major processes. SAP we have started in 2007, but thereafter this Project Pradeep, which is an IBM infrastructure platform, it has shown the way. We have done a huge integration between SAP and the BPM and ECM platforms. That's the business process management and the enterprise content management that we have rolled out to the IBM platform. And I think you'll be glad to know that our IBM platform is the largest in the globe that we have rolled out in NTPC. That is one thing. And we have also, based on this, we have gone for a shared service center. Now we do not do our procurement. We do our procurement only from 3 locations of NTPC. And payment is also centralized, complete payment. We have removed our finance professionals from each of these sites. We have removed our, the contracts and materials from each of the sites, and we have gone in for centralized procurements. And not only that, to keep our things rolling, we have seen that we have gone for the payments, because the payment is also a very important part. So we have around, say, 40,000 vendors, and we need to pay them. So, any vendor, any of our associate can put their invoices online from any part of India or abroad, and that invoice gets hit into the officer, the executive, who is the engineer in charge for their package, whether it's a PO or it is a contracts, it hits and it is being monitored. And we have to pay within, say, 30 days. If it is getting delayed, the whole chain of analytics is coming into position. Now, this is what is the power of digitalization, and that has taken into good stead in COVID-19, because you can understand that, everything was, people were, the operations people and the maintenance people are in the plant, but the officers who are working for the approvals for the back-end functions, they could operate from their home, and we did a hybrid kind of work that we went ahead. And I think, I do not know, this AIML, we have done a great lot, and we have started our journey in Simadri, where we have started doing the boiler tube leakages. And the water chemistry for any boiler tube is a very important part. And we are going ahead with the modeling of our systems. We have also gone for RFID-based material tracking system in Simadri. Apart from that, we have just recently tied up with Uniper for our digital monitoring of the assets and the pattern recognition, advanced pattern recognition of most of our major assets of, say, turbine, boilers, CW pumps, and we are steadily moving ahead on that front also. And in this regard, we have done some other projects, but I think I will continue while the
list keeps going on. The list keeps going on. Indeed, broad applications coming in, from Project Pratham to Project Pradeep, from digital mines to vendor payments. It just keeps expanding. But in terms of the wider industry, there's still a lot more to do. So I'll bring in Prateek for this. Prateek, the Indian manufacturing sector, it broadly still has some apprehensions about the benefits of embarking on an end-to-end digital journey, considering the investments needed of time and money. So for Smart Factory to be a widespread success, there is a need for entities to have a consistent vision on the concept, and of course, for the ongoing proof of concepts to deliver promised results, from deploying analytics to tuning it and scaling it. What lessons could McKinsey share in its experience of enabling industrial clients to tap into the value of their data and convert it to profits?
Thanks, Gautam, for bringing me into the discussion. So part one, as I start, I would lay down saying digital is no more an option. We are talking with the August group today, with century-old organizations moving towards digital and driving money through it. Right? We have already invested millions of dollars in our manufacturing setups through PLCs, SCADA systems, IoTs. Now is the time to monetize it, right? But as we look back, and in one of our surveys as McKinsey, we realized that 70% of companies taking digital transformations are stuck in pilots and POCs, Gautam, right? And even in the 29-30% that's been able to scale up, only half of them believe that they have achieved the transformation objectives that they have laid out. Right? And why do I call it transformation? Digital is a transformation. It is a shift in mindsets on how we invest, how our people develop, and how our leadership will spend the next time for years to come in terms of shaping the organization. Right? I think there are few learnings that I would want to share on these concepts. Right? So one, digital has to be made a way of working, right? And our leaderships will have to have patience and focus towards it. Ownership, both at the line level and the top management, is equally important for this to drive down. Second, for every penny that we deliver in terms of monetary value, we need to invest a penny in terms of enablers, right? And enablers are in terms of technology, in terms of people. There are, in this moment in India, skill shortages in terms of data scientists, data engineers, digital profiles, right? So how do we bridge that gap? is a big aspect on bringing the radical change in the organization. I really believe this has to be done in form of business-led technology roadmap rather than technology-forward roadmap. As and when we drive business value through the suite of use cases we just discussed over the last hour, right? Be it ease of doing business, the 5 parts laid down by Vineet, or in terms of logistics and supply chain. But until unless we drive business value, the technology will not have acceptance in our organizations. So one, we need to move from pilot to programmatic approach. We need to make it holistic in terms of business, technology, and people. And that can move us from pilots or POCs to scale up.
Absolutely. It's always about the business, technology, people, and of course, that's where the process and everything comes in as well. Those were the strategies for success in terms of making smart factories a more widespread phenomenon. But extending that conversation to the ROI factor, Vivek, I'll bring you in on this. Companies of all sizes, they tend to focus on ROI, and the formula for successful ROI is different for different sized enterprises. Now, many companies, they struggle with that upfront cost, but the cost of adopting or not adopting may be higher or even fatal, as we've heard from our panelists. So how can the cloud help manufacturing companies develop incremental plans that focus on a critical area, such as, let's say, downtime, with plans to scale the system as results pay for themselves through increased production?
Sure. So Gautam, let me take a broad view of it, right? In some sense, the problem is around how do I take a limited or maybe an extended budget and how do I maximize that, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Now, if you think about it, of course, one part is optimizing for an existing budget that you may have, right? Now, the reality is cloud has already provided a flexible financial model, and that's passe, so we'll not talk about it. But as cloud organizations, and Google in specific, we are investing in areas and technologies that could increase the viability or improve the total cost of ownership for certain areas, right? And I'll give an example of a solution area which is very topical to this conversation. I mean, if you hear the panelists, we use words like AI, machine learning, IoT, data analytics, and again, to solve problems around logistics optimization or demand forecasting or asset optimization, right? At the end of it, the underpinning technology is data, right? And one very conscious example of an investment we've done is in the space of what is called a serverless data warehouse, which is BigQuery. And the unique thing about this solution is it allows you as an organization to pay and your bill goes up as your consumption of data and your insights from data goes up, right? Vis-a-vis data warehouses that are on the cloud, BigQuery can give you up to a 40% lower TCO over a 3-year period, right? So that's an example about investment in technology that helps you get the best of initiatives that you have going, a limited budget, right? The second aspect of it is, again, the transformation aspect. And Prateek alluded to business-led transformation. Absolutely, right? And that's where the investments that Google has made is in the space of industry solutions, right? We no longer believe providing boxes, hardwares, networks is good enough, right? We need to be partners to help businesses solve for these problems. And our industry solutions are an example of that. Now, I'll go back to my initial point, and since we're speaking about supply chain disruption, right? We've created an industry solution, what we call the digital supply chain twin, right? Now, underpinning that from an accelerator for the enterprise standpoints are connectors to SAP systems, data models of these set systems, either it be SAP or other system of records, right? Industry-specific solutions, AI solutions such as demand forecasting or logistics optimization or inventory position optimization. We build those components out. And the idea is for all of these to be a force multiplier in businesses getting to value faster, right? So again, if you think about it, on one side, we're trying to optimize your current spends. At the other side, we're trying to ensure that when you embark on these transformative initiatives, your ROIs look better and your benefits are realized faster.
All right, from serverless data warehouses to supply chain digital twins, that's the way forward when it comes to addressing that ROI question. But we're at the halfway point of this discussion. We've heard application success stories when it comes to using technology. Let's also look at the challenges and explore how those can be resolved. And as Pratik mentioned, people is one of the biggest challenge. That's something you need to focus on. And with people comes culture. So I'll bring in Mr. Venkatachalam and Vineet for their viewpoints on how you shift company culture to a more digital first mindset to ease that transition from a purely manual mode of operations to a hybrid model with technology augmenting worker capabilities. So Mr. Venkatachalam, your views first, and then we'll come to Vineet.
Yeah, so the first of all, I mean, we have to acknowledge the fact that this is all about change management when it comes to culture. And it is also important to acknowledge that change management is often not the easiest thing to do. So something that we developed as a template based on our experience was a simple philosophy around talk, walk, and run. So when I say talk, it's about articulating the why, what is the problem statement, and is indeed digital the actual solution. And it's more about building that ownership and evangelizing and creating awareness about digital as a solution. So that's something that is built as organizational or institutionalizing the whole aspect of why we are doing it. Then comes the walk phase. Once that is the affordability question is answered, then comes the walk phase where we kind of develop the proof of concept, followed by do some small experiments, which is basically about firing small bullets before we fire the cannon. So and in that phase we don't penalize people for failing, and it's okay to fail, but fail fast. So that's the approach that we take as far as the walk is concerned. And then when you start running it, which we call it as run digital, it's about once you've kind of anchored around the solution around digital, we will have to, no matter what, make it work. Often we get into a situation where we have this hybrid concept of let's hold on to the past and let's migrate it slowly and stuff like that. I've seen our experiences, it's not work. So sometimes we have to let go the past and just embrace the solution and make it work for us. So in many ways, that's something that we've found working for us, and I think we will get better at it as we move along. But that's been our journey in this whole aspect.
All right, Vineet, your thoughts from standing still to walking the talk to running. How do you shift the company culture to a more digital first mindset?
Very similar thought. I think this is the playbook most of the people are applying. That is a great approach. But I think for us, adoption and sustenance are two important things which we are focusing on, right? While we are trying to run this journey of a digital, right? We are currently have about 100+ initiatives going on. And until this digital culture is inculcated in humans' head, this will never be successful. So to do that, there are two different approaches which we are following. I call it a bottoms up and top-down approach, right? So for bottoms up approach, we have 3 programs which is going on, which we call it. First one is the Digital 101. This is what we are doing with NASSCOM, and our target is to upskill about 14,000 employees. Then we have the Analytics Bootcamp. This is to create about 100 data scientists this year, and we are already fetching a lot of benefits of that. Then third is a lot of workshop which we do. And in this workshop, the important thing is we are working on not only on problem identification, but also celebrating success or getting the learning. What Vivek earlier said about fail fast approach, right? This is not about only failures, right? So either we celebrate success or we get some learning out of it. So this is the when we talk about the bottoms up approach, right? On the top down approach, there are 3 other important things which we are doing. First thing is Think Digital. This is championed by Akash as an evangelist and doing a lot of work, and completely blessed by Mr. Dougal. Amazing area where what we do is we talk about the art of possibility, as well as we showcase what all things has been done. So celebrating success is done here. Second thing which we do is we have an active program. What we have done is we have got a lot of good people who were in operations move to digital, and they are driving this digital program. They are championing this. And finally, lot of programs are, which we call it Class A programs, are actually sponsored by CEOs or the top leaders of the company. So both bottoms up and top down approach we have been doing. And important thing is there is nothing like failure. There is either learning or a success. That's the approach.
All right, from approaches to creating a digital first mindset, let's come to another challenge, which is skills. And I'll bring in Mr. Suri and Prateek for their views on this. Mr. Suri, how can the skills issue be addressed to properly leverage Industrial 4.0 technology across an ecosystem which has operated manually for much of its life cycle? We'll come to you, Mr. Suri, first, and then Prateek for his views.
Thanks for this question. One of the thing which we have done is, last year we did a wide range of training on cloud platforms to all our technology team members, and to senior leaders who are product managers of different products. We also sent them for ISB. We had a tailor-made course program for conducted ISB Hyderabad. So bringing a change in the mindset, as well as providing training to the key stakeholder as well as system administrator and developer is the key to success for any of the digital solutions. Because ultimately, once technical solutions are implemented, your consultant go off the hook. It is your in-house strength or in-house resources many times who carry all the day-to-day kind of support and rolling out new solutions. So this is what we have done. This is what our strategy is. In fact, we have a very strong team in-house corporate IT team. And of course, digital initiatives are driven by a separate 20-member digital team who are driven from the top. This is what we have done. In fact, every week we have steering. In fact, every month we have steering committee, chaired by the senior most member of the company, and updates are given. And I think in the last 1.5 years, many digital solutions have been rolled out in the process. So ultimately, as somebody has said, that bringing a culture change, it has to start from the top, and change management the key. And finally, you need to have long-term strategy in terms of many of underlying technology, whether it is digital, whether it is cloud, or whether it is providing a strict governance framework. And again, one point I don't want to miss here: security is the key, because data security coupled with the security, whether it is on cloud, on premises, is the key. Because ultimately, these solutions are used by all nook and corner of the country. That's what my experience is, and I think so far BPCL has done tremendous amount of work in this area.
All right, we'll talk about security in just a bit after Prateek's views on addressing this skills issue. Prateek?
Thanks, Gautam. I think the first part, we are half the battle there when we have acknowledged that skill in itself is an issue. Why I call it an issue? Because there is a level of geographic imbalance within our country on where our industrial setups and manufacturing setups lie versus where most of the digital talent resides, maybe in Bangalore, Bombay, and Hyderabad, let's say. So to solve this issue, right, we fundamentally believe that the skill set needs to be brought within the factory. And how we bring it is moving some of our metallurgists, physicists to become and re-augment themselves into digital roles, right? How that will happen is through a top-down leadership example setting. So we need to have our leaderships in organizations digitally trained to ask the right question, plus re-augment some of our roles to become data scientists, data engineers, UI UX engineers, and so on, right? This also addresses this long-term question that we have been grappling again, saying, will digital lead to attrition in organizations, right? So do we need to reduce the manpower requirements in our factories? I fundamentally believe, and we as McKinsey are working with multiple people in terms of upskilling these organizations and building these talents in-house, right? Does this solve the complete challenge? I believe partially. Even after these trainings, there is a high amount of attrition that keeps happening. So the solution to this is, one, arresting this attrition within organizations, but more likely to build an academy setup within each of these industrial companies to come and upskill them on an ongoing basis. And this has to be assisted through ecosystem partnerships, academic institution partnerships, to keep the engine running. Like for instance, Gautam, right, one of our industrial setup clients, they set an aspiration to train 25% of their workforce into complete digital roles, right? They re-augmented across functions from R&D, planning, production, technology to move them into newer roles like business translators, data engineers, data scientists, AI/ML engineers, put a digital center of excellence to solve for it centrally. So I believe the answer to this question is one, upskilling our existing people, two, partners with ecosystem to get the upskilling done and fill the gaps in the interim basis.
All right. From skills, let's move to security, something Mr. Suri mentioned, and I'll bring in Mr. Gupta for his view. Mr. Gupta, what would be the new approaches now required in terms of security for large enterprises where data touchpoints internally and externally have grown a lot?
So it's a mammoth task now, and you're right. The touch points have increased, and earlier, whatever data used to be housed in an enterprise data center with a lot of firewalls and a lot of security solutions has suddenly opened up a lot. There are a lot of interconnections happening from the data centers or from the cloud to other service providers and other entities. And that increases the threat vectors, it increases the threat areas. And so you have to become more vigilant on various threats that are emanating not only from internal, but from these state actors and other agents. However, with the technology advancing, a lot of solutions are coming in which help you in taking care of these challenges. Technologies like CASB, like anonymizing the data, and typical solutions on cloud, which help you arresting the threats at the internet layer itself or at the cloud layer, provide one of these solutions that could be looked at.
All right. As we head to the last leg of the conversation, let's come to the final challenge, which is balancing automation, making automation work for you, because automation can amplify the positive. It can also amplify the negative. So I'll come to Mr. Ghosh for this. Mr. Ghosh, as automation expands its presence in processes, what are the possibilities opening up which will one day become the mainstay, in your opinion, for India's manufacturing sector in terms of, again, engaging customer journeys and engaging workforce as well?
This is, I think, a very important question that has to be addressed. And NTPC, basically, if you see, the IT with the business processes has been a forefront. Now, basically, the IT-OT merger has taken place. The operation technologies. Other than we were having the operation technologies in a closed loop, like there will be power plants and those will be secluded from the outside world. Now, as my colleague from HPCL rightly pointed out, that we cannot keep ourselves secluded from the outside world. Now, that is the basic reason that we had started our journey on that OSI soft technologies, OPC PI technology, where we have almost, as of now, NTPC is having 2.5 lakh tags. And we are a kind of IoT that we had started our long journey back. So, here NTPC stands to gain in the sense that we have built up our data over approximately 10 years when we started on the OPC PI journey. And power plants, old power plants like our Singrauli power plant, which was the first power plant of NTPC, they were also all those DAS systems, data acquisition systems, and SCADA were made OPC compliant. Because now that data we need to, bringing in the real-time data. Some data we are bringing in on a millisecond basis or a 1 second, and we have a plethora of data, and we are talking to people. We have been using those data for our analytics as of now. But predictive maintenance, because as you see, in the regime where we've had the fixed kind of PPA agreements with the state governments, power purchase agreement as we call it, we were in a regime where the fluctuations of the demand, we were never bothered on the PLF, plant load factor, because we are generating at the highest PLF. Now what is happening is we are having to back down because the other sources of energy has also come in. And another thing that has come in major role for power plants is trading, day ahead trading, and all these concepts have started. So, I mean, any power plant you understand of a 500 megawatt or a 660 megawatt or a super critical, that is 800 megawatt power plants, if it has to be start stop, it's not a kind of start stop. So, this asset management and the IoTs have to play a big role. Because we need to understand that if you are backing down 100 megawatt for a power plant, because we stand to lose and all that, or the grid demand has suddenly been met by the renewable energy, which is much cheaper might be. So that is the kind of automation that we are thinking on, and we are doing our different strategies for the asset management and how do we predict a failure. There only we are, I said, we are tied up with this our the global, and we are doing both things. One thing is we are trying to do a global kind of search or a partnership, as well as we are also, as pointed out by my colleague Vedanta, I think we are also bringing up our operation guys and training. We have set up our team with the IITs. We have tied up with IIT Kharagpur and IIT Mumbai and IIT Kanpur, where we are training our 100 odd people onto the different technologies and trying to bring out the best that we can do. So automation, without automation on a real-time basis and a predictive maintenance, we are very sure with the kind of energy mix that is going to take place in the coming future. And in the coming future, it has already started, I'll say. You cannot stand a chance to be, gone are the old days where NTVC would say that, okay, there are a lot of competition and the margins are less. So you have to be really very, very, technologically superior to run your show. And we are already trading on that journey.
All right, a whole host of interesting insights coming on addressing challenges, whether it's creating a digital first mindset, addressing the skills issue, security approaches, or balancing automation. And as was said by our panelists, you need technology to stay ahead of the curve. But as we look to end the conversation, Vivek, I'll come to you for the last word on whether we could see more partnerships opening up between manufacturing companies and tech players to better leverage the data towards improving efficiencies and customer experiences.
I'd like to touch upon some of the conversations that we just had, right? One thing that is clear is a lot of the esteemed panels in the companies are on the digital journey and are trying to traverse the path at scale. To what Prateek mentioned, digital is not an option, but is a necessity going forward for other companies as well. But at the same time, there is a challenge of skills, resources, and expertise to solve some of these problems, right? Now, while these are fairly complex problems that all of us are trying to solve, it takes a village to solve these problems, right? So you cannot have enterprise companies solving it by themselves or technology companies solving them by themselves, right? Which is where I think a partnership and an ecosystem view of solving this problem is extremely critical, right? And one of the things that we consciously do with our enterprise base is use some of the internal methodologies that we've developed for innovation, creating products, and bring it to the enterprise customer so they can they can get value from these processes, and we can create a solution that's meaningful for them. The second part of the solution is, again, while Google Cloud is obviously a cloud player, partnership within our ecosystem, we look at problems beyond the scope of cloud. So sometimes we essentially look at also the larger Alphabet ecosystem and what we could do leveraging either our ads and marketing platforms or the Google X Moonshot projects that we have going, or any other such means, right? So we look at an internal partnership to solve our enterprise needs. And I think the third part of it is, of course, the critical component are additional ISV, SI, and startup players. And between a trifecta of enterprises, large-scale technology players, and the third bucket of ISV, SI, and startups, collectively as a group, we can solve for these complex problems, is my belief.
Indeed, Vivek. And it's not just restricted to the private sector. As Mr. Gupta mentions, public sector companies are supporting startups through a startup fund program, which enables many startups to reach stable solutions levels. So all across the board. And to quote what Mr. Venkatachalam said about creating a digital first mindset, when you walk the talk and then you move on to running, I guess in that context, we could paraphrase the quote saying, if you want to run fast, you run alone. And if you want to run far, you run together. On that note, it's time to conclude this conversation around the digital innovation quotient of the manufacturing sector. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for sharing their insights on the topic as part of Forbes India presents the next wave of cloud innovation in association with Google Cloud. And special thanks to our viewers as well for tuning in. This is Gautam Srinivasan signing off.
Forbes India presents the next wave of cloud innovation in association with Google Cloud. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.